Moving back to the company in terms of the labor force, we did see quite a number of people retrenched. We saw close to 240 in January, I believe, were the numbers that came out. You can clarify for us. And some last year as well. You know, this wave of retrenchments, we've actually seen quite a few companies do the same in Kenya across the board last year. But specifically with yourselves, you know, why was that necessitated at that point? And is there any way to kind of prevent getting to that point?
I think there's a misconception around that particular topic with Sasini specifically. We didn't retrench per se. We have a labor force, especially that works in the field, that we contract on an annual basis. And we contract them on a need to respond to the amount of crop we need to work with. And invariably, in some years, that crop yield is higher, in some years it's lower. And so if you look at our annual reports over the last several years, you'll see movement in staff. It really talks to that level. So it's not retrenchments. That's not true. So that's the one point to clarify. The second point is, as I talked earlier about our cost of production, which is the one key aspect of our business that we have under control. We've been looking at ways of bringing that down. One of the things that we have to do is to use technology more and better to help us to bring our cost of production so that we are competitive, and so in that way start to mitigate a bit of these price fluctuations we see in the market. And so somebody might ask, why do you give annual contracts? One, because that's the nature of the job, and two, it allows you to review how you input costs into that segment of your business annually. And so the number you're referring to, 240, is correct, but it wasn't a retrenchment exercise. It was people whose contracts had come to an end. And if you look today, for example, you'll see that number has gone up because the yield is higher. We've had rains continuously for the last 5 months, and so you need more hands in the field. If you look again in 6 months, it might go down because maybe we've mechanized a bit more. So it's a moving number, and it's not retrenchment, it's just contracts that are coming in and out of the business.
You mentioned digitization. What is one of the biggest opportunities that you've seen open up when you go towards the more digital side of things and moving towards actually becoming even more fully digitized?
I think it's more than digitization. So it's just general automation of the business. I think that Kenya has had agriculture at its backbone for a very long time. It continues to be the case. As much as we want to drive ICT as something of the future, and it is, we can't run away from the fact that our economy is backboned on agriculture. And there are two ways of doing that. The bulk of our agricultural products, especially the ones that we export, come from small-scale farmers. So someone with half an acre to 5 acres, maybe 10 acres. And then the other half would probably come from plantation groups like Sasini. The reason that some of the products we've seen struggle in the agricultural sector with attracting good pricing is because we've not had a very strong hands-on approach with controlling the costs that are going into the production of these products. And so because we've stayed labor intensive, the work that is done by human beings, by a set of hands, and I'm not saying that's wrong, but it's become very expensive with escalation in labor costs every year. And so a lot of companies that have these plantations look into different ways of doing this, and there's technologies all over the world that you can employ right from harvesting all the way to value addition. And so Sasini is bang on in that space at the moment. So the biggest opportunity we have is to tackle our cost of production by rolling out this automation in aspects of our value chain that would give us back the benefit of reducing the cost, protect our investments better, allow us to produce better quality more efficiently, and attract a good price by reducing that gap you have between your COP, your cost of production, and your realization in the auction market or wherever you sell privately. So, and that's not just a Sasini thing. I think you're seeing that challenge across all of our industry, especially in the tea sector. The big plantations are aggressively looking at ways to reduce the amount of money that we spend producing a kilo of tea or a kilo of coffee. And that's going to continue going forward because we want to be sustainable, we want to do it responsibly, and we want to do it sustainably. And so it's something that is not starting now. It's been in the industry for quite some time. A lot of it is around mechanization of processes. For example, harvesting, transport, modernizing the factories so that you're using more modern, less labor-intensive processes as opposed to what we've been used to in the past. So we're going to continue to do that because we'd like to secure the future of the organization by being sustainable.
Okay. And coming back, of course, recently the NSE did join 7 stock exchange around the world to ring the bell for gender equality. And tell us a little bit about the policies that your company has adopted in order to close existing gender gaps.
We are very deliberate about that. It comes under our sustainability pillar in our strategic framework. So there are several things we've chosen to do going forward as an organization. One, obviously, is to drive a performance culture to make sure that we celebrate our successes. We put a lot more deliberate effort in doing what we do to be successful. Secondly, which is probably the most important pillar, is focusing on cost containment and cost management in our cost of production so that we keep that at a level that we are comfortable with to make us profitable, of course, but more importantly, to make us sustainable. We want our great-grandchildren to find a great organization that we set up for them. Thirdly is to continue to drive commercial activities that bring in the revenue, and hopefully a lot of that revenue flows into the bottom line so that you have money to reinvest. And that is why we diversified into macadamia and avocado to expand our revenue stream, so we reduce our reliance on tea and coffee. And that's a focus that you'll see us continuing to look at. When we see those opportunities, we'll explore them. Fourthly, is to focus on our talent, the people that work at our organization, and empowering them, giving them the best environments to work in, and skilling them and upskilling them to ensure that they can give us back exactly what we want to drive the results that we seek. Fifth is to improve on our financial performances, the numbers that you talked about, make sure that we have enough reserves to take care of the organization going forward, but also to reward all our stakeholders, from our shareholders, our directors, and our employees, and all those regulatory bodies that we work with. Because and we, as you would know, being a listed company, it's really, really critical that your financial standing is strong. Lastly, which is the pillar that takes into account what you're talking about, is to do all this sustainably. And so in that sustainability pillar, we have 4 key things that we work with. One is general adherence to proper human rights. We treat everybody properly in accordance with the Sustainable Development Goals. 2 is to have labor practices that are clean and sustainable for the organization. Even when we bring in technology, we manage those transitions in a way that that is fair to everybody, fair to ourselves, fair to whoever is affected. Lastly is a zero tolerance to corruption. We just want to create a corruption-free environment in Sasini, and that calls for us to be deliberate about that. And there's a deliberate skew towards driving our gender parity so that we do have a 50-50 balance with regard to all levels of our employment. The agricultural sector is traditionally male-dominated, and so if you want to make a difference, you've got to be deliberate about it. So I'm very excited that we participated in the bell-ringing session, and that we get given the opportunity to showcase what we are doing as an organization, and hopefully other organizations can look at that and copy us. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. And I'd like to wrap up with a vital, important question. I would say, do you prefer tea or coffee?
I personally grew up drinking tea.
Okay.
And so somebody would think, and I guess a lot of Kenyans say they are tea drinkers. Coffee was an acquired taste for me when I got to the university. Yeah. And sort of like got onto it from the wrong side, because I had a roommate who used to tell me that if you want to stay up studying, drink coffee, it will stimulate you, and you won't go to bed. I don't really have a specific preference, but in saying that, I think those 2 crops are extremely important for our agricultural segment. I think tea, from what I remember, I may not have the exact number, contributes to about 7% of our GDP on its own as an industry. And so it becomes extremely important that we take care of that. So the whole industry produces about 550 million kilos of black tea. 4% of that is drunk locally. So it tells you, even though Kenyans think we're a tea drinking or a tea consuming market, we really are not. We're only consuming about 4% of what we produce. And so it's really important for companies like Sasini to be involved in growing that category, growing that culture, and growing the aspect of you need to drink tea for all its health benefits, for all its recreational benefits, and for the fact that we grow it. We really must be proud
Take pride
about
in it.
Yeah. Coffee, on the other hand, is growing well ahead of tea globally and in Kenya as well, driven by the cafe culture, driven by the need to meet at Java or at Art Cafe over a cup of coffee, they say.
Yes.
And so we are aided from that perspective. But you're seeing a general global trend of consumers looking for health foods. And so hopefully we can ride on that wave to try and drive a lot of more consumption across those two beverages. Okay.
Well, thank you so much for all your insight, all your wisdom. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure being here. Thank you so much.